Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Matt Bergman. So, choice boards are an effective way of assessing students. It provides students with options, and it's really engaging because it gives them autonomy and choice. Would you say that this example of a choice board is an effective or ineffective example? Why or why not? Well, one of the things about choice boards like this is that it's designed to measure a certain construct or skill or knowledge that we want students to master. But often I see examples of choice boards that are measuring multiple constructs, right? So in this particular example here, let's check it out. So what are we actually measuring? So when we look at the angle letter and we look at that, that's measuring a student's ability to write a letter to a friend explaining the different types of angles. Another thing that we're measuring here is vocabulary and also polygon poetry, another writing piece as well. Is that actually what we're trying to measure with our geometry unit, our geometry skills? Also, right here we have flag design, and that's measuring a student's artistic ability, counting the sides and a shape search. Shape search is helping us understand certain vocabulary, certain concepts. Counting the sides is helping us understand the structure of certain types of objects. And then a geometry city is taking that analytical thinking and allowing us to design a whole entire city and also testing our artistic ability. So, although these might be great activities, we're sort of all over the place with what we're actually trying to measure, the construct that we're trying to measure. So, often what we have to do is know the purpose of our academic standard and then develop a clear goal and then embed flexible pathways in order to do that. So, if we want to offer choice, we want to offer choice that is construct relevant. When you think of our educational system, there is a lot of construct irrelevance that are happening. This is one of my favorite comics right here, where for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam, climb the tree. Unfortunately, what happens is we sometimes have unintended barriers that impede students from understanding or demonstrating their knowledge. For example, if we have a word problem and we want to have our students demonstrate their analytical skills, well, if we don't have certain scaffolds and supports in place, like maybe a recording of that word problem or maybe a visual, then are we actually measuring our students' reading comprehension skills as well? We have to take that into consideration. If that's part of the goal, then great. If it's not, then we might want to consider how we design that. So what construct relevance is that we are designing assessments to actually meet the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we set to measure by developing that firm goal. So when you think about it, it's sort of like climbing a mountain, right? So there are different ways of climbing a mountain, different routes and different strategies that we might take. But the goal is to get to the same height, the same position on that mountain. Just like in an assessment, we all have the same goal. So let me just share with you a couple ways that goals can influence construct relevance, right? So communicating scientific ideas about the way stars over their life cycle produce elements, if we created a choice board to measure this learning goal, could we compose a piece of writing, a podcast, a video, or interactive poster? Absolutely. But if we change the goal and we say that students have to actually write an informative or explanatory text to draw from text and support analysis, reflection, and research, well, composing a piece of writing and even creating an interactive poster might be helpful, but perhaps creating a podcast and creating a video might not necessarily be. Those might be construct irrelevant options. So when we think about construct relevance, we see examples all over the place, like understanding each successive number that refers to a quantity that's one larger. We could do that through base 10 blocks, through construction paper, even through an iPad app. Or check this out. I love this example. If we want to determine the central ideas of text, we could have students write it out. We could have a video or audio response, or even do this sketch note, which is absolutely amazing. When you look at this, students absolutely know what the central ideas of this text are all about. So what are some other examples that we possibly could see? So I want to just share with you a few. So this was an example a fourth grade science teacher came up with. And what they were doing is they were trying to assess the water cycle. Now, what they did is they talked about the water cycle and then gave this to students, and students failed miserably because there were new vocabulary terms that they've never heard before. So there were barriers in that the sense of there there were unfamiliar terms, and so we had to think, were we labeling the process? Were we trying to measure understanding of new vocabulary terms? What were we actually trying to measure? So as a modification that we made is we took this and we put it into Class Kick. And this is what we did. We actually put together 4 different cards right here that had the terms already on it so that students could drag and drop to the specific part on the worksheet that they had. We also put together audio instructions, and just in case they needed as a little scaffold and support to remember what they just learned, there is a water cycle song and a website that they could visit. So that's one way of doing things. But what about providing other construct relevant opportunities? So this is called a standards aligned choice board. And what I love about a standards aligned choice board is that it's aligned to a standard. So this is the standard we're trying to measure, and here's the learning goal that we're trying to measure. And as you can see, we have 3 different options for meeting that. We have a written response, a presentation, or a multimedia response. Now, there were certain things that they needed to include if it was a writing piece or a presentation or a video. And there were suggested tools. But what were we actually measuring? Well, we used what is called a single point rubric to help measure specific things according to the academic standard we were trying to measure. This single point rubric has the things that we are measuring right here and areas for feedback. So if they need to improve, there's areas right here. If they've met the standard, here you go. Here's evidence of meeting or exceeding those standards. You could use this as a grading tool. You could use it as a feedback tool. But the point is that we all have construct relevant options that we can actually design into our assignments simply by looking at what the goal is and then backtracking and thinking, how can we actually get there?